Alright, I think I'm finally ready to kick this thing off. We got a Kirby shirt going on? Check. Small Kirby plush? Check. Bigger Kirby plush? Check. I think we're good to go. Hey guys, what is up? This is AntDude and welcome to my very first ever review marathon. I've been wanting to do this for a while now, take a look back at a series of games through a series of videos, and I feel like there's just no better way to start than with one of my favorite series of all time, Kirby. This little alien guy here is the Pink Puffball who could. He's one of Nintendo's longest running franchises, currently going 21 years strong, and most importantly, he is just so damn cute. I mean, just look at this guy. He's one pink ball surrounded by a bunch of other pink balls, and he is blushing 24/7. He is just, But really, I think for me, I love him so much because he's pretty much been there for my entire gaming life. Kirby's Dreamland and Kirby's Adventure are two of the games that got me into this whole life-sucking hobby that is gaming in the first place. And seeing as he's still going, and as some would say, better than ever, yeah, I'm still gonna be sticking around. And hey, I just figured, you never know, maybe some of you guys are new to the series and want to see what Kirby's all about. So for this marathon, we're going to be taking a look at the 6 main games featured on Kirby's 20th Anniversary Dream Collection for the Wii, starting off with, of course, the one that started it all, Kirby's Dreamland for the original Game Boy. Man, just looking at the cover art alone sends me back as far as you possibly can. Well, first off, funny story, Kirby's actually white on this box art. It's weird, you see the series was created by Masahiro Sakurai. Yeah, that's Sakurai. He wanted this new character of his to be pink, and he is on the Japanese box art. But good old Shigeru Miyamoto had to stick his nose in it, and argued with Sakurai because he wanted him to be yellow. So when Dreamland made its way outside of Japan, they were still bickering like an old married couple. So the designers just said, you know what, screw you guys, he's white in the game, he's gonna be white on the box, you guys can just deal with it, I'm not dealing with this nonsense. But at the very least, it kinda makes Kirby's yellow and white costume in Smash Bros. A little bit cooler, so... But we're done with this quirky little anecdote. Let's pop in this blast from the past. Except, you know, probably not in the Game Boy or Game Boy Player. For some reason, the game just ends up looking like total vomit, so... Dream Collection it is. The story here is incredibly simple, as you would expect from an early generation Game Boy game. This guy here, King Dedede, has gone and stolen all of the fruit and stars from Dreamland. You penguin bastard. So Kirby takes it upon himself to stop him. You eventually do that, have King Dedede blast off again, and then you magically, thanks to the power of the stars, inflate to the size of a huge balloon and carry Dedede's entire castle back to Dreamland so all the food can be brought back to the civilians. That's it. Don't you kind of miss the era where video game stories could be fully written in like 3 sentences? Certainly makes my job a whole lot easier. So here, as the White Puffball, you adventure through 5 different platforming stages, each filled with enemies who look like they're just enjoying their peaceful old life until you came along and ruined everything for them. That's one of the funny things about Kirby. A lot of the enemies just look like these cute little woodland creatures, but heaven forbid, they're standing between you and your food. Oh my god, please keep them in your prayers. And of course you got a few bosses too, one of which is a tree. I could never emphasize how crazy that sounds on paper and when you say it out loud, but one of the main bosses in the entire Kirby series is a stinking tree. You travel through Green Greens, Castle Lololo, Float Islands, Bubbly Clouds, and finally Mount Dedede, which I gotta say, awesome looking castle, major props on that one. I also love too that every single level starts off with this cute little animation. The entire series is just filled with charm at every possible turn, and that goes all the way back to the beginning. But the thing that Kirby is most known for is inhaling enemies, swallowing them, and taking their powers. And for this first game, you just don't do that. You can inhale and swallow, sure, but you are mostly a blank slate for the entire game, and are only working with what you're handed at the time. Not only that, but when I say this game has 5 levels, I literally mean just 5 solitary levels. Not 5 levels consisting of multiple stages, no, just 4 point A to point B levels, each with a mini-boss and main boss, which are both the same entity, and Mount Dedede, which sort of remasters previous levels with the boss fights included again. So it's a really short adventure. You could seriously beat this game in 20 minutes if you know what you're doing. But I gotta give the game credit, it all looks good for a Game Boy game and the music is all nice and catchy. Something I will be saying for every frickin' Kirby game, I will tell you that right now. But the levels themselves are definitely a bit simplistic. But there's actually still a few cool moments that happen throughout the adventure. Like you fly into a whale and then get shot off into the clouds. Then out of nowhere you get surrounded by this circle of just pure terror that you then take care of thanks to the power of super spicy curry. And then one of my favorites, if you climb all the way to the top here, there's actually a little hidden area inside the moon. Something that I thought was always the coolest thing because I found out about it myself as a kid. That always makes things infinitely better. And then of course at the end of every boss fight you got Kirby's traditional and just super adorable dance that always puts a smile on my face. And again, I'll say it again, but one of the bosses is a goddamn tree! But you know what, leave it to some good old-fashioned New Game Plus to get the replayability going. Upon beating King Dedede for the first time, you're rewarded with this screen here telling you how to play the game again in Extra Mode. And honestly, for being one of the very first games I played and making sure to play it multiple times every year, recording footage for this mode was the very first time I went through it. And honestly, oh, holy shit. Okay, here's the thing. I typically end up just playing the main mode over and over again because I figured extra mode doesn't really mean a whole lot. Yeah, the enemies are a little bit different, it's a bit easier to die. You know, I get it, right? I get it. But the bosses? Oh my god. So Wispy Woods and the combo of Lololo and Lalala just get really a bit faster, and I mean, that makes more sense. Also, Lololo and Lalala, kind of annoying names to say out loud over and over again. Just putting that out there. And then there's this piece of garbage blimp, Kabula. Fighting this thing for the first time was such an insane experience, man. It could really be boiled down to me just screaming, "OW!" every 2 seconds. But then there's Kracko. And man, that son of a bitch Kracko, let me tell you. The main fight? Not that bad. The mini-boss fight, though? Seriously died at least 10 times fighting it. Just look at this pattern. It is ridiculous. So you gotta get this thing, but then you gotta dodge those, and then you gotta, okay, but I can't hit you because you're going over, and I can't, you're going too fast! I think by the time I got to King Dedede, I was just sort of empty emotionally, so I don't remember a whole lot, but I do remember him being a pain in the ass too, so he could screw right off. Really, extra mode is a right pain in the ass, and the person who created those boss patterns definitely has a few screws loose. But honestly now, the shock of all of it made it really, really fun. Kirby is rarely ever like this, so the fact that I went kind of crazy going through this mode kind of made it totally worth it. And then for beating it, you get told about config mode, so now you can do extra mode again, this time with less lives, and you can have one hit point. Woo! 1 hit point. I couldn't even say that out loud with a straight face. I would not wish this upon my worst enemies. But seriously, overall, Kirby's Dreamland is a great game in the context of an early generation Game Boy game. There's not a whole lot to it, but it really is just on the same level of Super Mario Land. And honestly, it may be my incredible bias to Kirby, but I actually prefer this to Mario Land, so, you know, there's that. But at the end of the day, Kirby started off pretty strong for Nintendo, so now it was time to move him onto the big screen. Not too long after that, Kirby jumped onto the console scene with Kirby's Adventure for the NES. First you draw a circle, and then you dot the eyes, add a great big smile, and presto, it's Pikachu? Ah, damn it, it's Kirby, right. Man, where to begin with this gem here? Did you ever have a game as a kid that you yourself didn't have, but a friend or family member did, so you still got to play it a bunch, but you have a ton of nostalgia based on the game because of that? Well, that's Kirby's Adventure for me in a nutshell. I don't even want to begin to describe how many times I played this game before school. It was a lot, so spoiler warning, I have intense nostalgia for this game, which leads to an incredible bias, so at least you know beforehand. Let's get into it. The story this time starts off with Kirby sleeping. What is this, every 90s RPG? But something goes horribly wrong. There's no more dreams! Kind of a problem considering that, you know, it's Dreamland after all. So Kirby decides to visit the Fountain of Dreams to see what's happened. And that penguin bastard King Dedede is taking a bath in the fountain. And as it turns out, Dedede has broken the fountain's power source, the Star Rod, and given pieces of it to his friends. Which, again, one of them is a f***ing tree! So now it's up to Kirby to adventure around different lands and restore the Star Rod. And when you do, things take sort of a drastic turn. Upon beating King Dedede again, there's actually a scene that shows him desperately trying to stop Kirby from restoring the Star Rod, like, please, please stop, but Kirby clearly ain't having none of that, so he puts back the Star Rod, and in doing so, he releases this force known as Nightmare. Whoops. Then you gotta fight that big ol' orb of darkness in the sky with the Star Rod in tow, and then it turns into this freaky looking thing. This sort of starts the trend of Kirby final bosses being abnormally creepy looking compared to everything else in the game's universe. But upon seeing his demise, Dreamland is back to its good old self. King Dedede has already been officially demoted from complete antagonist to sort of a weird anti-hero villain blend, and Kirby can finally go back to sleep, which, let's be real, is the best reward of all. So yeah, the story is a bit more complicated this time around, but ultimately, it is the gameplay that took a major shift for the series. First off, this time around, there are 7 full worlds to explore, and they all have these really clever names. They're all based on food, and spell out in reverse Roy G. Biv, which is the clever way of teaching yourself a rainbow's colors. You guys at Nintendo, you're always thinking. There's Vegetable Valley, Ice Cream Island, Butter Building, Grape Garden, Yogurt Yard, Orange Ocean, and Rainbow Resort. You know, rainbow, not necessarily a food. There are rainbow cookies, which we're just gonna say it's based on that. Cause why not? It makes about as much sense as a tree being a boss, so why not? Now each world does have multiple stages going for it, and once you start off level 1, it is easy to tell right off the bat all of the changes that they made immediately. First off, now Kirby can run, which couldn't do it before, so that's nice. But mainly, his ability to take enemies' powers is finally here. When you inhale certain enemies and swallow them, you get to use their powers against other enemies. There are 25 in total, and it kinda goes without saying, but the whole copy ability thing is pretty damn cool. It's sorta like the Mega Man idea just cranked up to a whole new level. Granted, a lot of the times I just end up constantly switching from one to another because it's there, because it's just a lot of fun to do. I gotta give major props to both the Sword and Fireball, easily the best 2 out of the bunch. But what's genius about all of this is that there are parts throughout the entire game designed for specific abilities that they make sure to give you beforehand. You got awesome rare ones like the hammer that you can only get from a mini-boss, and the ever-elusive UFO, but then you got a few not-so-great ones. Like Light, which seriously lights up 2 dark rooms in the entire game that you can clearly see where the platforms are. It's all to see that there's one hidden door in the darkness that you can normally enter, otherwise, you just don't know where it is your first time. That's it. And then, of course, there's Sleep. I bet you'll never guess what it does. Yep, forces you to sleep and you can't do anything until Kirby wakes up by himself. Would be one of the most asinine things ever conceived by mankind if it wasn't for the fact that Kirby himself is obnoxiously cute. But then another thing that's cool is whenever you get 2 enemies in your mouth at one time. When you do that, you have the chance to get a random ability now. Just look at this suave guy here. He looks like he knows how to party. Alright, Mixer guy, what do you got for me? Sleep. Alright, you know, that's oddly appropriate. You spend enough of a good night with that guy, you're gonna turn into that guy. So it makes sense. Really, Kirby's Adventure lays its hat on the whole ability thing. It lets every level have at least one unique thing going for it, which ultimately is what makes a game pretty awesome. I do say it a lot, but I really think a good platformer goes great if it makes sure every single level is different, and that is no different here. And of course, you got a few secret areas too to find some bonuses, like battle arenas. Just listen to that roar of the crowd, they are on the edge of their seats! But the thing that always gets brought up when Kirby's being talked about is the difficulty. No, it's not the hardest game in the world, but I think it could be as challenging as you make it. Sometimes I go balls to the wall and make sure to use as many abilities as possible, but sometimes I try tackling bosses with just inhaling, which for the likes of Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright and Heavy Mole, not as easy as it sounds. But then there's the awesome fight with Meta Knight. Here you're forced to use the sword and have a good old-fashioned sword fight with this equally skilled beast, and then when you finally take him down, his mask flies off and then whoa, what? Not only does he look badass with the mask on, with the mask off, he's just another Kirby? That's freaking amazing! This here blew my mind as a kid. I think in the realm of NES platformers, that could be kinda considered a plot twist. The game also started the trend of a Kirby game being really focused on minigames as well, of which there are 3. First up, you got Crane Fever. So basically, the same guy who thought up Krako's boss pattern in Dreamland thought it would be a brilliant idea to make a minigame based off of an arcade crane machine, which for those of you who don't know, are impossible to win at. Good. But you know what, this minigame isn't as impossible as that. I think after years of practice, I finally got it down. Nope, never mind. Then there's my favorite, Egg Catcher. You just have to open up your mouth to catch some eggs, and make sure it's closed to avoid the bombs. The bombs magically don't explode if they bounce off your head, and the eggs all turn into chicks if you make sure to catch no bombs, but if you do catch some bombs, those chicks never see the light of day. Yeah, think about that one. And then last, and probably the most iconic, Quick Draw. You just gotta wait for the right time, you gotta wait for it, and BAM! Dead. This one actually gets pretty damn tough. I swear, that bonkers guy knows me like the back of his stupid monkey hand. But this is gonna be it, man. This is gonna be the time I finally... God damn it!
Fatality.
And finally, once you beat the game, you get Extra Game, where you can play the game again with half the hit points and no saving, so you gotta do it all in one go. Thankfully, the rest of the game stays intact, so no more of this BS. But before I end this off, I want to give a special mention to the graphics and soundtrack. This is one of the last games released for the NES, and it definitely shows. The areas just look great for an 8-bit console, and the variety is staggering. Honestly, you're gonna think I'm pretty crazy here, but as a kid, a lot of these places I sort of considered to be atmospheric. The thing is though, I grew up in New York City surrounded by concrete. Sunset over the water was pretty damn atmospheric. I absolutely love the game's soundtrack too. Seriously, from here on out, Kirby's soundtracks have consistently been really good, but man, every single track in this one is a gem in my opinion. From the super upbeat and catchy and just so happy, to the ones that actually sort of add to that atmosphere I was talking about. It's all just great ear candy. And also, major props to the King Dedede theme. Seriously, one of my favorite boss tunes of all time. It is just so good. And also, the final main level of the game is a complete throwback to Dreamland. Thought I'd point that out because it's the coolest frickin' thing ever. Over the years, Kirby's Adventure has been remade so many times on multiple different consoles, and I own every single one of them. What can I say? You of course have the original NES game, of course. It's on the Wii's Virtual Console, the Wii U's Virtual Console. You of course have the excellent Kirby's Dream Collection. But then there's two more versions. First off, a few years ago, Nintendo released Kirby's Adventure on the 3DS's eShop under the 3D Classics line. So now the game has, honestly, a pretty great 3D effect, but mainly, the original game had so much going on the screen at one time on plenty occasions, it kinda made it hard for the game to register your button presses all the time. It's nowhere close to a game-ruining issue, but that is entirely gone from this version, easily making this the definitive version of the classic. And really now, it doesn't hurt to have another awesome 3DS eShop game added to your collection. Or maybe you want something more in the line of a full-on remake. It's gonna kill me to say this next part, but almost 12 years ago for the Game Boy Advance, Adventure was remade as Nightmare in Dreamland. I say it's almost gonna kill me because, oh my god, it's been almost 12 years. This full-on remake packs a redone soundtrack, a fantastic new art style, and a few new minigames that allow for link cable multiplayer. It says here too that the main game can use multiplayer too, but I never used it. The menu says you can do it though, so it's another plus. But easily the coolest part about this version is Meta Nightmare, where now you play the entire game again as Meta Knight. And just like Extra Mode in Adventure, but unlike Extra Mode in Nightmare and Dreamland, you can't save in this mode, so it is a one playthrough only mode, and it records your best time. So as someone who has played this game way more times than I would like to admit, this is a sweet, sweet addition. But the game also debuted two different things for the series. First off, a modified logo. Kinda cool. But mainly, this started the trend of Kirby constantly being pissed off outside of Japan. I don't know what compelled Nintendo to think a Pink Puffball being angry is going to do better than a Pink Puffball looking happy, but that is the way it is. This beautiful game here started that beautiful series of box arts. I ain't complaining. And hey, if Japan is any indication, this game will soon be hitting the Wii U's Virtual Console. So, you have no excuse. Physical or digital, doesn't matter the price, treat yourself to some awesome Kirby's Adventure. I know this first video was a bit long-winded, but again, Kirby is one of my favorite series of all time. I could talk about him for hours and hours, not even get close to tired, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet. With a great portable debut, and an even better console debut, he can only really go up from here. So next time we meet up, we're going to be talking about one of my favorites, Kirby Dreamland 2, for the original Game Boy. So until then, hopefully you guys enjoyed, thank you all for watching, and until next time, you guys take it easy.